Hi everybody and big welcome to a Rocco Turbo combo deck tech video. With me today we have Vincent. Big welcome.
Nice to meet you guys. I am Vincent. I predominantly play cEDH mostly, but I've recently taken a very big liking to Rocco. So I've been playing it quite a lot for about 6 months, and I thought today I would share a deck tech on a turbo iteration of Rocco. So the thing about Rocco is a very interesting commander. You can build them in many different ways. There's stacks, there's mid-range, but also not a lot of people play this, but turbo. And in the recent months, Rocco has exploded in popularity. There's so many different decks, so many different ways to win, ways to, find different lines to winning. All you really need is mana and some setup. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off going over a lot of the key cards within this deck. So first things first, our commander. Why is Rocco so unique? Rocco is essentially a straight tutor from the command zone to the board. And what makes this so good? Well, Rocco forgoes a lot of cEDH decks needs for card advantage. Rocco is the card advantage. This lets you mulligan very aggressively because as long as you have mana and setup, you can just straight tutor out any win con you have from your deck. So let's say, for example, a lot of mid-range decks, they tend to go for card advantage, ramp, and maybe a setup progressing towards their win. Rocco forgoes the card advantage part because all you need to do in this Rocco turbo iteration is build up to 7 or 8 mana so that you can tutor out Arena Rector, kill it, tutoring out Vivian, which acts as a birthing pod, getting out your win line. So the first card, the key card of this deck that makes this deck a turbo iteration is Arena Rector. Arena Rector says whenever it dies, you exile it, you search your library for any planeswalker, and you bring it straight to the battlefield. So the one planeswalker we have in this turbo iteration of the deck is Vivian. Vivian, as I said, is birthing pod. So one of the interesting thing is let's say you have 7 or 8 mana. You Rocco for X=4 getting out Arena Rector. With any sacrifice outlet, burn spell, or way to kill Rector, you kill them and you get out Vivian. So Vivian lets you plus sacrificing a creature to tutor out creature with CMC +1. Obviously, we have Rocco on the board, which is CMC 3 when it's on the board. So you plus Vivian, sacrifice Rocco, tutor out Felidar Guardian, which comes in, flickers Vivian, letting you plus/minus again. So you just birthing pod or plus Vivian, sacrificing the Felidar Guardian, which lets you get Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide comes in, targets the Felidar Guardian in your graveyard, brings it back so that you can flicker Vivian a 3rd time. When you do that, you plus Vivian, sacrificing Felidar Guardian to get Kiki-Jiki. Kiki-Jiki has haste, lets you activate itself to clone a non-legendary creature. Obviously, the only other creature we have is Karmic Guide. When you make a token copy of it, it brings back Felidar Guardian. And between those two, Felidar Guardian, Kiki-Jiki, you can make infinite Felidar Guardian tokens with haste and swing out at your opponents for the game. So one of the deck's lines, the interesting about the deck's line is that even if your combo is interrupted, you still keep a Vivian on the board. That means turn 2, turn 3, you have a Vivian. Even if they kill your Kiki-Jiki, maybe they flash out Endurance to stop you mid-combo while you're targeting the Karmic Guide targeting the Felidar Guardian with Karmic Guide, you still have a Planeswalker. That's what makes the deck so interesting, so resilient, because even if they stop you in their combo, you can still pivot into your backup line. So going into the backup line, in case they stop your combo, somehow Kiki-Jiki gets killed or exiled during your win attempt, you have Dockside and Temur Sabertooth, the classic. Dockside is a very strong card, as we all know. If your Dockside is able to make 5 treasures and you have enough mana to get out Temur Sabertooth, you can continuously return Dockside back to your hand, cast them again in order to get infinite mana. Obviously, with your commander being a tutor in the command zone, you can search through your deck for whatever you need. Be it, for example, Twin Shot Sniper, which let's say they kill your Vivian pod line after you go through combat, there's something like that. Or maybe they make it so, they board wipe you instant speed, cyclonic, who knows. Somehow you still have a bunch of mana, a bunch of treasures. You can still just get out Twin Shot Sniper and just flicker it as much as you want and kill them. Another interesting thing is we, unlike Godo, which a lot of people would compare our deck to, we have protected lines. We actually trade the speed of Godo for more resilience, a little bit more resilience and a lot of protection, in the sense that, let's say you don't have a lot of confidence that you can win a turn because everybody's holding up open mana. Well, we can instead of tutoring up Karmic Guide, going for the win, and knowing we get interrupted, we can go for a safer line. One of my favorite cards in the deck is Ranger Captain of Eos. Ranger Captain of Eos says, when it comes in, you search your library for a 1 CMC creature and bring it straight to your hand. But more importantly, when you sacrifice Ranger Captain of Eos, your opponents can't do anything on your turn except activate abilities and cast creatures, which there's only really a few creatures that stop our combos, such as Endurance. We don't really need to worry about spot removal after that. So what makes Ranger Captain so significant? Well, Ranger Captain, in conjunction with the other best card in the deck to tutor out when we have nothing better to do, Wirewood Symbiote. Ranger Captain usually tutors up Wirewood Symbiote. So 7 mana Rocco can tutor up Arena Rector, or 7 mana Rocco can tutor up Ranger Captain and then cast Wirewood Symbiote so that it can set us up for a win the following turn. So that's what makes Rocco so strong, because you, instead of going for the win, getting interrupted, you can actually sandbag your win by slowing yourself down one turn to get out a protected win the following turn. And let's say they actually do have a kill spell. Well, they're probably just going to use it on Ranger Captain of Eos, and now maybe they're down 1 kill spell. Well, now you can get out Grand Abolisher next time and try to go for that again. Another really, really strong card in the deck is Treasonous Ogre. Rocco, like I said, is a tutor in the command zone. However, if you have obscene amounts of mana, you can go for a 1-card win straight up. Well, granted, if you have mana, right? Treasonous Ogre lets us do that. So the reason why is because if you Rocco for X equals 3, you can get out Imperial Recruiter. Imperial Recruiter lets you tutor for Kiki Jiki. Well, with unlimited amounts of red, well, I wouldn't say unlimited because you might go down a lot of life, but if you have enough red to cast Kiki Jiki as well, cast Kiki Jiki, activate it, targeting the Imperial Recruiter. Now you can tutor up Village Bellringer. And if you have 1 white in addition to your obscene amounts of red, you can actually just win all in 1 turn. So all you really need is Treasonous Ogre, double white, and a green, and enough life to get out a bunch of red, and you can go off. My favorite card in the deck, aside from Ranger Captain of Eos, is surprisingly Somberwald Sage. Somberwald Sage is an incredibly powerful card. The reason why is because in conjunction with Wirewood Symbiote, you can actually just win the game out of nowhere, because you produce obscene amounts of mana when you flicker Rocco back to your hand. So let's say you have Wirewood Symbiote already out. You Rocco for X equals 3, getting Somberwald Sage. Maybe Somberwald Sage was already out. Maybe it was there turn 2, turn 3 when you cast it. But more importantly, you cast Rocco for X equals 3, get out Village Bellringer, untapping Somberwald Sage and a Dork. Bounce Rocco back, untapping Somberwald Sage, tapping a bunch of mana. And then you Rocco for X equals 8, getting Kiki Jiki. So out of nowhere, you can just get both Village Bellringer and Kiki Jiki in 1 turn, because Somberwald Sage makes so much mana in conjunction with Wirewood Symbiote. Another cool combo that doesn't get discussed a lot is Grand Abolisher with one of our instant speed spells, Final Fortune. The reason why this is so cool is because if you have a bunch of mana, you cast Grand Abolisher from your hand, or maybe you tutor into hand the turn before, and then your opponents think, okay, well, now Rocco goes from 7 mana to 5 or 4. They can't win the turn anymore because they spent their time casting Rocco. They spent their time casting Grand Abolisher. But then out of nowhere, you play Final Fortune. Final Fortune, in this case, is essentially essentially Rude Awakening. It's a ritual that pretty much just says, untap all your lands, take an extra turn, and you go for it. If you lose, you lose. But because we have Grand Abolisher, the only thing that really stops us here is Odawara, and very few things other than that I can't really think of off the top of my head. So it's really cool because Grand Abolisher, they won't expect you to win, cast Finale or Final Fortune. Out of nowhere, you untap, have all your mana again, you can go for the win straight up with protection. And if you look at all the instant speed spells here, a lot of them deal damage. And generally, spot removal in a deck without card advantage engines is pretty bad. But what's cool about these spells is that they all have double use cases. A lot of the popular stacks effects in cEDH right now are creatures. Drannith Magistrate, Opposition Agent, sometimes Aven Mind Sensor, what have you, Thalia. Well, we can not only use these spells to kill the stacks pieces, such as Drannith Magistrate, that prevent us from playing the game, but they can also be used as ways to kill Arena Rector. My favorite kill spells in the deck are generally ones that make it so it's really, really difficult to interact with our win, even if they have a counterspell. Let's say you Rocco for X equals 4. Your opponents don't know if you're getting Ranger Captain of Eos or you're getting Arena Rector. Well, in this case, they let it resolve. You get out Arena Rector, and then they think, well, now he has to find a way to kill Arena Rector. I'll counter the spell he plays. Well, there's a lot of ways to get around counter spells. First things first, we have Rending Volley. On the right here, Rending Volley, well, can't be countered. On the top left, we have Collateral Damage, which even if they counter it, you sacrifice Arena Rector as part of the cost. So there's a lot of these cool effects that just get past the counter spells. We just ignore them, we don't care. There's Inferno Plunge, same thing, you sacrifice Arena Rector, and if someone's not familiar with this line, they'll be scratching their heads, not knowing what to do next if they don't have spot removal. Another really cool line is Greater Gargadon. Greater Gargadon lets us win through Rule of Law effects. A few years ago, Rule of Law and Winota was a lot more popular, and Rocco was a lot stronger in that meta because we played a lot of creatures. Even if we played artifacts, we still recover faster than a lot of mid-range decks. And if they have Rule of Law out, a lot of decks can't really combo through it without removing Rule of Law first. Well, if you suspend Greater Gargadon and cast Rocco, it gets past the Rule of Law. However, you can't do it the other way around. It's some rule restrictions. Anyway, long story short, I love Greater Gargadon. If you suspend, they can't respond to it until you sacrifice. You already have sacrificed the Arena Rector. That's when they get priority again. So that gets around a lot of stuff. Another cool thing is, like I said, you only really need to cast one spell. If you have Greater Gargadon out suspended, Rocco for X equals 4. Sacrifice the Arena Rector, you're done. And then if you look through the rest of the deck, if you notice, we don't have a lot of stacks effects. One of the biggest stacks effects in green that everybody loves is Collector Ufi. If you're playing green, they'll always tell you to play Collector Ufi. That is a trap in Rocco, unless you're playing stacks. The reason why is because Rocco is a deck that needs mana. And a lot of these mana-producing artifacts, you can take advantage of them better than a lot of other decks. Your commander is the win con in the command zone, right? Forgo the card advantage, forgo the interaction, keep the hand with mana, and just go for the win. Don't try to slow down your opponents, you're trying to outrace them. Obviously, in other builds, you can probably think differently, but in this build, we're not playing Collector Ufi. Because when you really think about it, simply to tutor out a 3-drop creature, we're spending 6 mana already. Instead of slowing down your opponents, Collector Ufi, and ourselves, we can just utilize this mana to repeatedly cast Rocco or repeatedly attempt wins, even after they stop us.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you need to kill your Arena Rector quite consistently, and
Yes.
you're utilizing these interactive spot removal spells to do that. I really love that, by the way. I think it's a beautiful combination to slot in sack outlets, but keeping the interaction high. But what rates do you need? Like, what is the amount? Because you could literally have too many, and you could have too few. So where would it land, do you think?
I'd say that the way the deck was built, I personally did not build the deck. This deck was popularized by 2 people. I believe their names are DMAC and Midnight Eve. And myself and a lot of other people, but not enough to be the mid-range group. We're the Turbo group. A lot of other people have made small iterations to the deck. And a lot of discussion has gone into how many kill spells, bolt spells is too much density. And I believe a lot of math was put into it by DMAC to where you have a significantly high chance of getting at least one burn spell when you and ways to get to 7 mana with Rocco. And so there was a lot of math that went into it. I believe in ideal spells or cards available for killing Arena Rector, the odds of seeing one or more of them in a 7-card hand is 66.845%, including secondary methods. The odds of having more than one way of killing Arena Rector in a 7-card hand is 80.528%. That's 80% chance of having a way of killing Arena Rector.
How many did you need to achieve that percentage?
14.
14. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 1, 2, I guess, with this one. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do you have any more that I missed?
All right, let's count it from the start. Okay. So we have,
you have Fury.
That's 1. Greater Gargadon is 2. Yes, Twin Shot Sniper is 3. Scrolling down. Eldritch Evolution is 4. Inferno Plunge is 5. Shattering Skull 6. Abrade, Collateral 7, 8. And Lightning Bolt 9. Mind Collapse 10. Reckless Rage 11. Rending Volley 12. Thunderclap 13. Technically Birthing Pod, I don't really count that.
No.
And then we have a land, High Market, which is 14.
Yep, that does it. And do you play Crop Rotation in this deck? Yeah, you do. That's literally 15.
Crop Rotation is some good tech because we can actually instant speed out. Well, we don't really need to, but we can get out Gaia's Cradle if we have a high density of creatures mid-game, or we can just straight out tutor High Market as a Rector kill spell in case we needed to bolt a Drain of Magistrate along the way, which slows us down.
What do you think of City of Traitors? So it's a land that has 2 colorless mana. You can only use it for like turn 2 and turn 1, literally. But the cool thing about City of Traitors is the part where if you have it in your opening hand, you can get one of your 2 CMC rocks into play, like your Grim Monolith, Arcane Signet, and you have 2 talismans. And it could also help you with your Birthing Pod. But it is colorless mana that also fuels your Rocco's X ability. So, City of Traitors, what do you think?
Yeah, so the problem with City of Traitors is, well, you can't really play... Oh, sorry. If you play a land, you have to sacrifice the City of Traitors. And one of Rocco's strengths is its resilience. Obviously, we do play a lot of ritual effects, be it Jeweled Lotus, Lotus Petal, everything from Simeon's Spirit Guide all the way up to Elvish Spirit Guide. But however, when it comes to lands, 2 colorless that sacrifices itself is kind of iffy. Believe it or not, I'm actually already not a great fan of Grim Monolith. I feel that, yes, Grim Monolith's good, Mana Crypt is good, Mana Vault is good. However, we prioritize having more colored mana, and our land count is a bit, how do you say? It's a bit tight. It's a bit difficult to make
space. I see.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to make space. We're already running Ancient Tomb, and believe it or not, one of the weakest cards in our decks is the Talismans. The Talismans are incredibly explosive coming out of Ancient Tomb Talisman or Mana Crypt Talisman, but I feel that if you want to improve the resilience of the deck going into mid-range, you can actually cut a lot of these effects such as Mana Vault and Grim Monolith if you really wanted to slot in a more mid-range package focused on creatures, accounting for stacks.
Why are you not including Jessica's Will? Yeah, that's a lot of mana.
We actually don't play a lot of the instant and sorcery type rituals. The reason why is because our deck tries to take advantage of the ability to play through a lot of these non-creature stacks effects. Yeah. So the question is like, what would I cut for, Rite of Flame, Jessica's Will? Another problem is Jessica's Will is 3 mana, and not only is it a non-creature, it's 3 mana that only makes red. A lot of our ritual artifacts are either 1 CMC, 2 CMC, or 0. Like I said, our weakest ritual in the deck is actually Grim Monolith, because you have to pay 2 mana into it to get 3 colorless, which Rocco's 3 pips, and if we want to win turn 3, it actually kind of hurts our math playing a 3 CMC spell just to get, let's say we play a 3 CMC spell to get like 5 to 6 red, we still need white and a green, is what I was thinking.
A lot of turbo decks are usually playing wheels. They're quite addicted to them. You don't actually include them. Wheel of Fortune and Wheel of Misfortune are in your consideration, not in the main deck.
So the reason why is because I had a lot of discussion with the guys in the Discord. Like I said, our deck ideally wants to win turn 2, turn 3. But remember what I said at the beginning of our deck tech is our card advantage is our commander. All we need is the mana. In truth, Rocco doesn't have a lot of interaction. Yes, we play Pyroblast, we can play Wear and Tear, we can play Red Elemental, but we don't really want to be giving our opponents cards. And because our deck utilizes our commander as the whole game plan, as the card advantage, as everything, we don't really want to be dumping out our hand and then turn 3 or turn 2 casting a wheel and then hoping that we draw into more cards. Because the reality is 3 CMC is a lot for card advantage in Rocco. And basically, by the time you want to cast wheel, we kind of want to be winning, is what I was thinking. Also, yeah, our opponents develop, we cast wheel, they get an even bigger hand, more opportunities to, interact with us.
Yeah, usually. Unless they're winning instead, which could be a risk too.
Wheels are strongest turn 1, turn 2. I can see the draw to them because technically we are playing, Sylvan Library. And for a while, I had considered cutting Sylvan Library for a Wheel of Fortune, and I was strongly dissuaded against it. And I can see the reasoning. 2 mana versus 3 mana is still kind of a big deal. And like I said, yes, we can get more card advantage, but the thing about Rocco is, Turbo Rocco especially, is you kind of want the line to winning already during your mulligan, if that makes sense. You want the ability to make 7 mana and a way to kill Arena Rector all in the hand when you're mulling down to it, which is very, very possible. This deck can mull all the way down to 4 and 5 and still have ways of killing Rector turn 3 consistently. Very, very powerful. So that's why I feel that we don't have the need to wheel our hands so often. Granted, if I were to switch to a more slower iteration of the deck that relies on more card advantage, more resilience, by all means, that's why it's under consideration.
So what are like Rocco's weaknesses, or what is your version of Rocco's weakness, so to say?
So one thing a lot of people don't like to talk about is what their decks are weak to. Well, for those of you who want to learn how to play against Rocco, I will give you the truth. Rocco has some pretty big weaknesses and some pretty big strengths. The thing about Rocco is it plays around a lot of stacks effects. It can play around Thalia. Obviously, that slows it down because we play artifacts. We can play around Rule of Law. But what we have an issue playing around is anti-tutor effects and Graph Digger's Cage effects. So the most annoying card to sit across is a Graph Digger's Cage. The second biggest annoying card is a turn 1 Drannith Magistrate. And even worse, if your deck is filled with those types of effects that stop ETBs, like Torpor Orb. Torpor Orb is probably one of the worst effects we can see sitting across. So, Hushbringer, Torpor Orb, Drannith Magistrate, Graph Digger's Cage, a lot of these effects that stop you from cheating out creatures, stop you from tutoring. Opposition Agent, believe it or not, Opposition Agent and Aven Mind Sensor hurt us. However, they don't prevent us entirely from winning. We can still win if we draw into a bolt effect. Obviously, same thing can be said about Drannith Magistrate. The reason why Drannith Magistrate hurts so much more is because Opposition Agent can be pretty telegraphed. It needs 3 mana, whereas Drannith Magistrate only needs 2, and it's pretty easy to mulligan down to like 5 or 4 of your stacks deck just to get out a turn 1 Drannith or a turn 1 Torpor Orb, those types of effects. Other effects are, dampening spears, things that stop us from playing a bunch of spells all at once. Granted, like I said, it slows us down, doesn't prevent us from winning. But Torpor Orb effects are the bane of our existence. And one of the worst cards to sit across is a mirror against a Rocco player that's mid-range. Because mid-range Rocco players can be playing the new Elish Norn, which doubles their ETBs and shuts down everyone else's. That is a disgusting card that can give them the win out of nowhere because, all they have to do is Rocco for X=8 and get Kiki Jiki Village Bellringer, all while laughing because you can't play anything with your commander.
What about strength? Like, why is this Rocco version of yours good? Why should we bother listening about all of this?
Traditionally, cEDH decks want 4 things: ramp, card draw, interaction, and a way to progress towards a win in a very efficient manner. Mid-range decks do all of these things generally very well. However, for example, Blue Farm, one of the strongest mid-range decks, has to mulligan very aggressively to get these pieces. And sometimes they have to mulligan to the point where they go down to 4 or 3 or 5 just to get out a Rhystic Study or Mystic Remord in hopes of recovering the card advantage that they pretty much traded away by mulliganing so much. Rocco doesn't really need card advantage when you're playing the turbo iteration. The card advantage is in the command zone. The progression towards the win is in the command zone. And everything you need is in the command zone, as long as you have the ramp to do it. So this lets us mulligan incredibly aggressively just so we can get out Rocco. So let's say you mull down to 5. Well, as long as you can get to 7 mana, you can still get out Ranger Captain, get out Wirewood Symbiote, and with Wirewood Symbiote, even if you don't have a way of killing Arena Rector, you can get out Somberwald Sage, and then you just get out Village Bellringer and Kiki Jiki all at once, and suddenly you have the win.
So speaking of mulligans, what do you think? Throw it away, I think.
I think this hand is incredibly risky. It looks good at first glance because you have Arena Rector, you have a way of killing it that's also the birthing pod you want, but you want mana. And this doesn't even have a way to get out Arena Rector turn 2 or turn 3. You are gambling that you're drawing into any sort of mana advantage. So I would say we kind of ditch this hand. Let me look at this hand.
Now we're talking.
This hand. This is a good hand. This hand has a Mox Diamond, which we probably don't care about. But it has a Chromox, Temple Garden, and Lighten Tutor, which can get us any of our mana positive rocks. I mean, as well as just Birthing Pod straight up. Because we have Dockside Extortionist, which gives us mana. But believe it or not, I actually consider this hand relatively risky.
I can agree. Yeah. The land count is very low. And you have to pitch Temple Garden to Mox Diamond to get the red mana.
Yeah.
And then you have to pitch the Elvish Lenore Elf to the Chromox to get the Dockside finally.
Yeah. Also, we kind of have to rely on our opponents to be playing artifacts and enchantments in order to net positive with Dockside. And I feel like relying on your opponents, I know it's Dockside. It'll generally get there, but we don't want too many uncertainties when playing Rocco. So I would actually mull down to 6. This hand is pretty bad.
Let's move.
We have no mana. Yeah. Wow. Let me think about this one. Let me think. This is actually keepable. Because the reason why is because we can flash in turn 1, play Finhorn Elves. Turn 2, play land. We have 3 mana. Play Jeweled Lotus. I actually like this hand. Unfortunately, I actually can keep this hand in a lot of cases because we can just Rocco for a Dockside and like turn 2, turn 3 to net the mana in order to cast Birthing Pod. Also, we have Eladamri's Call, which can just get us a Grand Abolisher. This is a bit of a slower hand, but we do have a line to winning, and we don't really even need the Rocco. We can actually technically sandbag, flash in Endurance. Problem is we need 6 mana in order to get Birthing Pod out and win all in one turn. This is a slower hand, but it's actually a pretty good hand if you want resilience. Because we have the Sylvan Library, which draws us an extra 2 cards a turn. We have the Birthing Pod, which, like I said, is a 1-card win con of our commander. Granted, you have 6 mana and Rocco out already. The reason why is because with any 3-drop, Birthing Pod and 3 mana, you can just go straight up for the Felidar Guardian, Karmic Guide, Kiki Jiki line. But like I said, this hand is pretty slow, and if this was my opening 7, I would probably pitch it. If this was like going down to 5, I would probably keep it.
Yeah, I agree.
But we don't have a forest to play Utopia Sprawl, and our Mox Diamond is kind of useless because we don't have a 3rd land, so we can get out 2
but
mana
you're not
turn 1.
that far away from getting like Rocco into play at 5, finding Dockside, and then Timur Sabertooth Dockside.
I agree.
Like it's a hand that you kind of want to keep, I think.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. This is not a keepable hand.
Nope. Vivian in the hand.
Yeah. Vivian in the hand is actually kind of bad and kind of good. The reason why is because obviously we can no longer Rocco for X equals 4 and then kill Vivian. Instead, we have to get to 6 mana straight up, cast the Vivian, and have a 3-drop in play. But if you have enough ways to get mana, let's say you have like 5 mana in hand, or sorry, 5 mana already out, and then next turn you can have your 6 land and cast Vivian. Sometimes I just Rocco for Grand Abolisher straight up, and then next turn I cast Vivian and go for it. So it's very, very possible. This hand, let's see, it produces 3, 4, 5. This hand can produce 6 mana because the crop rotation can get us a Ancient Tomb, but we do have double green. Very possible, but very, very possible. The problem is we need a white source. We need 3 colored sources to get out Rocco, right? And crop rotation sacrifices one of those colored sources in order to ramp.
I mean, you're gonna draw cards too, so
yeah. That's true. So this is one of those hands you can gamble on.
I think it's can be fine.
Yeah, it's keepable. A bit slower than I would like.
I like this. No, I don't like this one.
This hand is a trap.
Yeah, you don't have access to green mana. It was almost there.
Soul Ring,
because like you have Worldly Tutor and red mana for Dockside, but yeah,
This hand would stuck. Be insane. Yeah, this hand would be insane if it was a green red land or anything other than Gaia's Cradle. But yeah, I would definitely pitch this hand. So pod compositions, turn order are a huge part when you're playing Turbo. The reason why is because if you're going first and you're playing Turbo, you can mulligan very aggressively and try to get like a turn 1, turn 2 win, turn 3 win. With Rocco, we generally win turn 2, turn 3. Turn 1 is possible, but it's not very likely. However, turn 3 is almost all but guaranteed if you know how to mulligan correctly. Turn 2, a bit more difficult, a bit more risky, definitely possible. If I was going first in a pod, I would definitely go for a turn 3 win. Sometimes with protection, I really hope I have protection. But if I have to mow down to 6 to 5 to get the turn 3 win, I would probably do it. Now, if we go last, we are in a pretty bad spot. We might have to mulligan for some resilience and mulligan in a way to where we don't have such an explosive start that we draw insane amounts of threat, but to the point where we can still win. If you've been playing cEDH for a while, you notice that there's a pattern when it comes to these types of turbo games. Sometimes there's 2 turbo players, 2 mid-range players, any combination, maybe a stacks. But the person who goes off first gets stopped a lot of the time, and the person who goes after them wins. So if you go last, you're already in a bad spot. However, if you keep the threat off of yourself and maybe you tutor for a Ranger Captain instead of going for the win, not only does Ranger Captain act as a deterrent against people going off with non-creature spells, it acts as protection when you go off on your turn. Whereas if you're going first, sometimes you just forego the entire Ranger Captain. You just go for a turn 3. But if you go last, yeah, there's not a lot wrong with just tutoring for protection. If you're going, second, same thing. I generally go with I play as if I was playing first. And if I was going third, same thing. I play as if I was playing fourth, if that makes sense. Don't draw threat to yourself when you're going last. You're already doing bad as it is. Try to politic well. Try not to dump out your hand as fast as possible. I know you can get wheeled. Stuff happens, life happens, but that's when pod composition comes into effect. Some decks, you recognize that they want to dump their hand out as fast as possible and wheel. Some decks, you kind of recognize that they want to play stacks effects. And some decks, they're pretty much turbo with wheels or, a similar turbo deck. And being able to dump your hand out fast, hold back your pieces to not draw threat, or play your pieces immediately because you know someone's going to play like a Thalia effect is part of playing Rocco. I know that if I'm playing against Winota, I will dump my hand out. I don't care if I draw threat because if you've noticed, Winota has become a monster in the past 2 years, and it's probably the number 1 threat at the table. So I hope that my opponents will, politic with me, probably, hopefully not listen to the Winota player and just straight up kill Winota and leave me. But if I'm playing against like mid-range decks, things become a lot harder. Mid-range decks all decks have this thing called the window of opportunity when winning. Our window of opportunity when winning becomes significantly worse outside of turn 2 and turn 3 playing against mid-range. So that's why we generally tutor for protection against mid-range decks, and we just go for the win against turbo decks. Against stacks decks, we just sit back and relax. Unless they're playing Opposition Agent, Aven Mind Sensor, Stranded Magistrate, I'm content with sitting back, waiting for somebody to remove the piece. That person goes for the win and gets stopped, and then we win right after them with protection sometimes. One of the biggest rules playing against stacks is remove the stacks piece you need to play, or remove it when you're trying to win the same turn. Don't remove it for somebody else in past turn. You're probably just going to lose, and you're down resources. Rocco doesn't have a lot of interaction outside of bolts, maybe a few elemental blasts, so you got to make sure you play your interaction wisely. Because like I said, our advantage is with the commander, not with card advantage. If you're playing mid-range, sure, tutor up Esper Sentinel, maybe play a few wheels. But for our deck, we wait until the last moment to play our bolts. Like, the person before us playing past his turn, we'll kill the Stranded Magistrate on their end step, and then we go for the win. We don't just kill it out of nowhere because we're emotional. There's a few more details, a lot more scenarios we can talk about corner cases. And one of Rocco's biggest secrets is the Falahi line And if you're interested in that and interested in playing mid-range, seeing even more crazy stuff, you can join the Rocco Discord and hang out with us, talk with us, see some of the coolest lines that you've ever seen.
Can find a link to that Discord in the description below of the video.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you guys there.
Thank you so much, Vincent, for coming here and talking about Rocco. Until then, guys, take care and see you in the next video.
Peace.